So, I spent a few weeks making this Geometry Nodes based asset pack of furniture, and it's kinda cool but also pretty useless. Look at this lamp for example. You can adjust the height, the thickness, the diameter, even the number of legs and their angles. You might be thinking, hey, that's pretty neat. But do you know how many nodes it took to create that monstrosity? Too much. It would have been 10 times faster to just model it by hand. But no, nodes. Nodes everywhere. So, this isn't going to be the standard step-by-step tutorial that I used to make, because I wanted to try something new after the break. Instead I want to show you how I built this generator, why I did it, and maybe share a few tips and tricks along the way. So you can learn from it too. So, why is this generator node the most useful product out there? Well, in professional workflows, especially in architecture, when you search for furniture, you usually look for real ones. Ones that your client can actually purchase. That's already one strike against it. And from my side as the creator, every single model took hours in Geometry Nodes network, just to make something relatively simple. So it's not the most optimal process to do things. So why even talk about it? Because honestly, even if it's not the most practical asset pack ever, building it taught me a lot about Geometry Nodes, and I think that some of that can help you too. So, instead of focusing on how not top 10 useful this asset pack is, let's dive into how it actually works and the little tricks I discovered along the way. The big idea behind this project? Gizmos. I don't see many people talking about them yet. The first time I saw Gizmos in Geometry Nodes, I simply loved that idea, giving the final user direct editing capabilities right in the viewport. You can click, grab an arrow, and magic, everything updates. So that was the main goal. The most important parameters controlled with Gizmos. And the smaller details left to the normal modifier interface. I actually took inspiration from architecture software like Archicad or Revit, where you can adjust some objects directly in the scene. So, there are three main types of gizmos. Arrow gizmos for movement, dial gizmos for rotation, and this one. For example, with a simple default cube you can add an arrow gizmo, plug it in with the set position node, and now you can move it around interactively. Need to slow down the movement, just multiply the value here. Simple enough, right? So, why do my Gizmos node trees look like this? Because if you want to have clean and nice UI, like let's say on this wardrobe, then when you make it wider, your arrow needs to move to the new position. Same for the height, depth or rotation. And that means math. A lot of math sometimes. So, you end up calculating offsets just to keep those gizmos lined up, and that's where the complexity just explodes, especially with more trickier one, like this. So, how do you even start modeling things like this in Geometry Nodes? First, I search for reference photos for the furniture I want to recreate. I collect them all in one place, Miro or PureRef for example, whatever works, and then I break the objects down into the main parts. Take this table for example. It's just legs and the top part. Simple. The lamp, that was a bit trickier. Way more parts as you can see. I will get to that one in a moment. And yes, I spent way too much time on this lamp. After I figure out the main parts, I sketch out how I want the gizmos to work. Radius, probably an arrow here. Thickness, another arrow. Number of legs, that's perfect for a circular gizmo. I actually like to do this part on paper before I even open the Blender. Then I start building. For the tabletop, I begin with a mesh circle and add thickness with my trusty custom Solidify node group. Quick tip, If you want a bevel and you are sad that Geometry Nodes doesn't have one yet, here's the trick. Add a bevel modifier after your Geometry Nodes modifier and set the limit method to weight. Then in Geometry Nodes use a store named attribute node with the name bevel underscore weight underscore edge. You can copy it from here. And set the domain to the edge. Now you can drive bevel amount directly from Geometry Nodes. Super handy. For the legs, I start with a curve line, extrude edges, scale and offset. Convert back to a curve, fillet to add those rounded profiles. Then I use fill curve node and solidify. To place them around, I instance them on points on a circle with correct aligned rotations and again drive bevels with named attributes. Nothing too crazy so far. Until you get to the gizmos, which are actually not that hard. But the node trees sometimes get complicated. For this table, I ended up with 9 gizmos in total. When you select the object and then the gizmo node, you can see them highlighted one by one. Pretty neat for keeping track. Some of them are simple, like the height arrow, where you just update the z position with a combine xyz node, but some of them are a little bit trickier, like the radius arrow. I choose the positive y direction, so x is 0 and y is just the radius. But what about the z? That took a little bit of extra math. Height minus the half of the top thickness, so the arrow sits perfectly in the middle of the table top part. And then there are circular gizmos. Like on this coffee table, aligned perfectly with the fillet radius. I even added a little logic to keep the gizmos visible when the fillet is 0. Because we don't want it to disappear completely. Oh, and the contour strength matters a lot in gizmos. Without this multiply node here, the gizmo is either way too sensitive or not enough. So multiply it by 100 in this example and suddenly it feels just right. So it's pretty important to keep that in mind if you want nice user experience. Sometimes the Gizmos node setups ends up bigger than furniture generator part itself, but hey, that's all part of the experiment. Another thing I really tried to do was reuse node groups. I built a little library, planks, wooden frames, bevel setup, and it helped a lot, but creating each piece of furniture still took a long time because each of one is pretty unique anyway. So it was way longer than I expected. In total, I made 16 different models. 2 of my favorites, the sofa and of course the lamp that I mentioned earlier. So, the sofa is actually kind of useful, I think. I wanted that sofa have kinda realistic look as much I could create, so I used volume remeshing combined with displacement maps. One of my favorite little node group here is the pillow solver, that I called it. It takes a simple cuboid and turns it into a pillow, with settings to vary the results. As you can see, it's pretty useful, I think. Then I added the displacement cloth group for subtle wrinkles. It's small detail, but it makes a big difference. And then there's the lamp. This thing is pure art for the sake of art, because technically you can adjust a ton of parameters, but you will probably end up with very similar lamp anyway, because of the way it's constructed. And the time I spent on this, let's just say it might have gone a little overboard with this one. Let's look at the cable alone. Almost 1/3 of the entire node network. I divide it into 4 parts: the floor section, the spiral around the center, the connector to the top, and the piece going to the bulb. Each part carefully placed, smoothed with mix of fitted curve and blur attribute, tied together with set position nodes. It works, and I'm proud of it, but wow, that was a lot of nodes for that one. So, yeah, this was a huge project and I learned a ton. I hope sharing my process and few tips along the way was useful for you too. It's not the most practical or life-changing tool, but if you are curious and want to play with it yourself, I've put a link in the description, and there's even a little discount code if you want to give it a try. I hope this inspires you to just experiment, build something even if it's not that useful, because you might learn a lot in the process and even find some weird bugs that are crashing Blender. I'm looking at you, Blender 4.5. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!